Welcome to this video about using Twitter for professional use. I recently recorded a shorter video and promised a long format video that goes into detail about setting up your account and actually discussing why it is useful to use Twitter in a professional capacity. There's a lot of skepticism about Twitter at the moment, and quite rightly. There have been problems in the last year. I don't need to go into detail. If you follow the news, you will probably have heard about it. But the fact is that Twitter is still a really good platform for professional use. You just need to know how to make most of it. So in this video, I will not only address how to set up your account and the first steps that you should take with your account, but also about what you do to make the most of things professionally. And actually, there's a lot of power in Twitter when you get it right. So basically, we need to talk about what the benefits are of Twitter. And that's that it's a very low entrance point to networking. A low entry entrance point to networking. So basically what I'm saying is it's really easy to get started. It doesn't take a lot. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on the desktop. It doesn't really matter, but you can set up an account in no time. And once you've set up that account, you can actually connect to people very quickly as well. If you are familiar with LinkedIn, you will know that a connecting request has to be accepted. In Twitter, it works slightly different. In Twitter, you can follow someone and they don't have to follow you back, but you do see their updates, and that can be really useful. There's a reason that a lot of big organizations and small use Twitter, because they can actually broadcast messages very quickly and get a response very quickly if they require so. So using Twitter in a professional capacity helps you, if you get it right, to build up a network of knowledge, a network of people who know about the things that you want to know about. And once you have set up that network, you'll be able to get information from them. I will give you some examples later in this video, but to me, Twitter is a brilliant source for encountering things that I didn't know were there, or encountering things that I didn't know I quite needed, but by seeing them explained on Twitter, I go, yes, I need to know more about that. I need a better understanding. Now, Twitter isn't very broad, right? It doesn't offer you pages and pages of information per tweet. It's limited to, I believe it's 240 characters. But that's not necessarily a problem. In fact, that's probably its strength, because by limiting the number of characters, you can actually get very concise, precise information very quickly. Twitter will ask you for a code and a password. The code will be sent to the email address or phone that you've used to register, and the password is something that you will have to decide on. Make sure to be secure when choosing your password, as always. Then the next step is where Twitter sort of forces you to choose 3 interests. Whether you have them or not doesn't really matter. I recommend that you follow things that relate to your professional use, so science or health and well-being, and then you get another screen after that asking you for further details for each of those categories. Just browse around a bit, select the things that you may find interesting. It does actually serve a function. What this is doing is setting the Twitter algorithm, and we will talk about that in a bit more detail later on. When you have done that, you are welcomed to your new Twitter account. Now, there's a lot of detail here that you need to understand to make the most of it, but frankly, it's also pretty straightforward. You click away the cookies and you understand the message at the top of the screen, and then you can already start tweeting if you choose to. We will be doing that a bit later. And we are first going to unfollow poor Ryan Reynolds that we've just followed because Twitter demanded that we did. When we unfollow someone, they don't get a notification. And that is something that you need to be aware of. You are absolutely free to follow, mute, block any account that you don't want to see in your timeline. And this is where you really have control at Twitter and what you get to see. But there is another awkwardness about Twitter that unfortunately isn't explained very well. That is that the default, when you are in your home screen, shows that you are for you. And for you basically means that this is stuff that Twitter thinks is of interest to you. These aren't necessarily people that you follow. This is just stuff that Twitter's algorithm has decided that you are interested in. And sometimes stuff that you're really not interested in. On my own personal account, I get updates about the entertainment category and Kardashians. And I'm like, why? And then I worked out that one of the reasons I get updates about Kardashians is because I like basketball, and apparently the Kardashians have relationships with basketball players, and therefore, if I like basketball, I must also like the Kardashians. This is one of the weakest areas of Twitter, in my opinion. It isn't a great algorithm. They're not quite sharp enough, in my opinion, in how they do these things. It's also a way for them to push certain messages that have been paid for to be pushed, and advertisement as well. And you don't really want that. So my tip there is to just select following. What following does is limit your timeline to those people that you are following. We are going to have a more intense browse of the Twitter interface. And the first thing is the Explore button. Basically, what this is the trending window. This is content that for one reason or another is tweeted about a lot. And this at the moment is very generic for me because this account doesn't have a lot of content to it. So you can see that there's tweets about Catherine and general election now and alpha enthusiast and Madonna. Oh, Madonna. Oh, often when, and I'm not saying this is the case now, I'm not going to click on it. Often when someone has just passed away, your timeline will shoot full of all this sort of content. Anyway, trending is basically what is coming up. Oh, look, Ryan Reynolds again. And you can also see things that are basically talked about a lot. So Monday motivation is quite a nice Twitter thing, if you like, because it's people that are tweeting about their motivations on a Monday. These little hashes in front nominate a hashtag. So what that means is a hashtag is something you can follow, that you can actually click on, and then you can see whatever is going on with it. So if we have a look at some of the more esoteric hashtags, we can use search, and we can search for nurse life, I think it's called. Nursing life. Trying to remember what it's called. Nursing, just nursing. There we go. So when you search for a hashtag, all you get in the tweets is people that have used that particular hashtag. So nursing is there, and there, and there, and there. And that's a really nice way to find content that you might be interested in. If you were, for example, interested in the BMA, the British Medical Association, then you can go and search for BMA. And that will hopefully give you content that relates to the British Medical Association. So that is quite useful. The other thing that you can do here is actually search for people. So as we are in Scotland, if you just search for Scotland, you can then find the UK Government Scotland, for example. You can click on that and you can follow it very easily. You can also set a notification that when they tweet, you get notified, handy for on your phone and things like that. I don't really bother with that. And the other thing you can do here is make more specific what you want to do with this account. So if you recall, I actually talked about being able to block certain people. If you have followers that are annoying and things like that, this is where you do that. So you go to their account and you click on the little three dots, and then you can do the things that you need to do to make sure they are not bothering you. So you can actually mute them, block them, and you can even report them. And just like with other social media, unfortunately, sometimes you have to report people because they are blatantly racist or sexist, or because they are making comments that just aren't right. This is again something where Twitter unfortunately has really declined in the last year. You may have heard that a lot of moderators have been fired from Twitter, and unfortunately that has affected the reporting function. I tried to report someone recently who was incredibly rude and racist, and unfortunately they didn't act on it at all. Then recently also I was just looking for a random hashtag and came across an account that was trying to sell drugs in that particular area that I was looking for, and I reported them, and again it was not acted on. So unfortunately that doesn't work that well. What does work though is just blocking or muting. Muting is handy if you want to keep following someone, but you don't want to see all the stuff that they are tweeting all the time. You can mute them and it won't show up in your timeline. Blocking literally means done, blocked. And you can do that even when you are not following them, because you still get access to these functions. So that is something that is worth keeping in mind. So this is where the professional side of things comes in, because the better the list of people that you follow, the better the list of content that you get served by Twitter. So it's really pretty straightforward. You want to follow people that are useful, that will actually help you to create a nicely curated Twitter account. I always recommend starting with people you know, colleagues, people that you've had training from, for example, corporate accounts that actually link to the work that you do. All that sort of stuff is useful. Your professional associations, your interest associations, there's all sorts of things out there. And if you follow them, that will build up the profile of your Twitter account. So if we come back to the home timeline, you can see that we are slowly getting a few more tweets. Here's one from NHS Tayside. Always good to see the colleagues putting messages out. And when you find something that you're not particularly interested in, or something that you're really keen on, with this button you can then follow. So this was a retweet by Public Health Scotland, and you can follow this particular institution. Why not? And then you can also add them to lists. So again, lists are quite useful. If you don't really want to hear a lot from them, but you are following them, you can mute them, and you can also choose to block them, which I think doesn't actually... I'm just going to test this. I think that they are still in my followed list. No, they're not. Okay. So sorry, people. I possibly it was such a sweet Twitter account as well, and I feel guilty now. Anyway, so what we have is a lot of functionality under that button. You can just unfollow someone on the spot, not a problem. But I'm just going to follow some Scottish trusts here or boards. NHS 24, Highland. Oop, I didn't mean to click on that. And it says education we will follow, and it says Orkney. And what you will see then is that we are following these different institutions that we want to follow. Scottish Government Health, Scottish Ambulance, Western Isles, Jason Leach, and it says Scotland Healthcare Improvement. Now, one of the things I need to say is that if you just follow these sorts of corporate accounts, it can get a bit boring, and it can be a bit boring quite quickly. So there's nothing wrong with you spicing up your timeline a bit by following people that you find interesting. So I'm saying that now because Jason Leach to me is a very interesting character, has a lot of stuff to say, and actually communicates quite clearly. So that's a nice one to follow. But if you're a massive Spice Girl fan and you want to, follow Jerry Halliwell, then do. There's nothing stopping you doing that. It doesn't make your account less professional. Right, so we've looked at the whole of that interface and, well, most of the interface, and got a bit familiar with all the different parts of it. Now let's send out our first tweet. And this is going to take some time as well, because I need to explain a number of things. When we are at home, you can see that you can type something here, what's happening. And this is where I think you already need to be aware of whether you're running a professional account or whether you are running a personal account. So my account at Tzijlstra, Tzijlstra, if you were to follow it, is a very personal account. I put things on there that I fancy putting on there. I don't worry about whether it's overly professional or not. I don't put anything unprofessional on there. I don't put anything on there that might get me into trouble, simply because I don't think there's anything I have to say that could get me into trouble. But in general, I am very aware that it's my personal account. If you are running an account from a professional perspective, so let's say at Derby we worked a lot with student nurses who all were encouraged to use Twitter. At that point, you are probably aware that you are tweeting in a certain capacity. And this is where Twitter can be really interesting, because there's a fine line between the personal and the professional. And my opinion on that is pretty simple. We all know that there are people behind accounts. So when it comes to this account, the LKS Tayside account, it's a clear corporate account, and I will only be tweeting clear corporate messages on it. But when it comes to a, Nurse Tim account, I am a human being. I'm allowed to express myself as a human being on that account. And I think that's one of the things that makes Twitter more interesting, because you're allowed to express your opinion as long as you do it within that sort of bracket of being professional. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes people are very judgmental about putting personal content on a professional account. I don't think that's really true, because let's say I am a nursing student and I follow lots of my fellow nursing students, and I like putting images up of my cat. There's nothing wrong with that. It means that the following day I can have a conversation about my cat, come out of the blue. Someone will say, "Oh, I saw your tweet about the cat. That's such a lovely beast. It's black and white." I don't know. But, you can have a conversation, and that is actually really helpful and powerful, because a professional networking tool, which is what this is, there has to be plenty of room for the social as well. If you ever go to a conference or a big learning event, you will know that it's also about chatting to people, getting to know each other. Now we know what our first tweet, what the nature of it is going to be, is this is our first tweet. And I use our because it's a corporate account. Nobody needs to know, it's just me. And we are creating it as part of a new video discussing Twitter use in a professional capacity. Now, I capitalized on purpose because it's actually something I don't like doing, so I can show you that it is really easy, if you use the right keys on your keyboard, to edit a tweet whilst you've got it in this editing mode. Now, this is one of those hot potatoes for Twitter. Once you've tweeted it, you can't edit the tweet unless you have a Twitter Blue account, apparently. So you do want to double check whether you're tweeting something that makes sense grammatically, spelling wise, and whether it covers the message that you think it does. So this is our first tweet, and we are creating it as part of a new video discussing Twitter use in a professional capacity. And one of the things that we can do now is add a image. So you can see here, NHS Tayside have a standardized image that they've got in their account. Health social care services across Tayside continue to be busy. Here's how you can support us. And then they've got a link to that support. Now, the nice thing about images on Twitter is that they take up a bit of space in the timeline, and that tends to mean that they get noticed a bit more as well. So in general, it's pretty good practice to add an image. Now, I haven't got any images set up. I've just got my own sort of personal account here, and there's nothing really here that I think will be of value, but we're going to add that anyway. Right, so you can now see that I have added an image that, might convey a bit of a story. So discussing Twitter use in is it all red lights, or should we give it the all green? Right, so now I've made it topical. I've added that picture to the tweet, and I've used the picture to broaden my message a bit and hopefully get a bit of interest. So thinking about how you compose your tweets is quite useful. And then we could say health libraries as a hashtag. Not that it links to this particular message, but then I know that people follow the hashtag health libraries. They might see this tweet and go, oh, here's another health library, let's follow it. So that might be useful. And then what I could also do is tweet at myself at T Zijlstra, and then basically what happens is that T Zijlstra, me, will get a notification of this tweet. There is something that people do that I find very annoying with images, and it's very much a marketing trick. So I don't recommend that you do this, but I will explain that it is possible, and it's up to you whether you want to use it or not. But Twitter has a capacity of a certain amount of characters. If you want to add a lot of people, when you add an image, you can tag people, and unfortunately, you can basically tag as many people as you like, as far as I can tell. So it takes away the cap on the number of people you can tweet to directly, so you get some sort of interaction with them. I'm not sure that's a great idea. What I will also point out, and this is far more important, is that you can add alt text. Sure, alt text, an image of the Tay Railway Bridge with 4 lights showing red, white, white, and green. Copyright, as if anybody actually cares about this, but we're going to add copyright T Zijlstra. There we go. Now, you can't hit enter because that will just add another line. So what we do instead is add save. You can also alter the image here, and you can add content warnings. So if it's nudity, violence, or sensitive, you can add that. So I'm just going to save that. But actually, for some of you, that content warning may be really relevant. For example, if you are into tissue viability and you want to share images of decay in a foot, I can't remember what the word's called, is it? I can't remember what the word's called, gangrenous, whatever. You can actually add that image and then put a tag on to say, look, this isn't really safe to work for work, or this is sensitive content, you might not want to click this, and that will hide that image from a regular timeline. So very powerful tool. Then the other thing that we can do is add emojis. So you might want to use emojis. I don't know, I'd never really used them. But when you click on it, you can add the Twitter emojis, all very exciting. You can also add a date for it to be published. And again, for Twitter in a professional capacity, this can be really interesting because it means that you can schedule ahead. You can make this tweet appear at a particular time where you know you might get a better audience, or when you are launching something and you don't want it to appear before that time. So that is quite useful as well. You can also get an overview of all your scheduled tweets, so you can actually, change things and stuff like that before they go out. Then finally, you can add a location, which in this case is also switched off because I have an image. So I'm going to tweet this, and I will talk about this button very briefly. You can add a tweet to follow up the existing tweet. So what that means is you can make a chain of tweets. We call that I don't know, I can't remember what we call it, but you can add tweets, a thread, that's what we call it. Oh, I knew it would come to me. So you can add tweets, create a thread. If you have more to say about something, you're capped by the limit of characters, then you could add more. It's generally best practice to say, this is tweet 1 of 2, 1, you know what I mean. And then basically just add a second tweet and say that that is tweet 2 of 2. Up to you how you do that. Right, so we are going to tweet this, and now it's out in the world. Right, it will give you lots of help again. I don't really need it, but you might find it interesting to read that. And then you get to see your own tweet in your own timeline. And if you update the timeline, you will notice that it now is at the top because it is somehow chronological, but not really. So yeah, it remains a bit of a mystery how that works in this following. And actually, you know what? I think it's changed several times over the past few months because there's a lot of changes going on at Twitter, and sometimes it's difficult to follow what is what and how it affects things. But yeah, so the tweet is out. You can see that our logo is with it. You can see our name is there and our tweet handle and when we tweeted it. So let's put out another tweet that we're not actually going to tweet, but we are going to discuss some other options. The location only works when you are on your phone, I believe, so it gives a GPS location. But what we could also do is send out a GIF or GIF. It's a graphical interface file, so it must be a GIF. If people say it's a GIF, they're wrong. But these are just quick, funny reactions. And whilst I am here, I will show you something that winds me up. So if I go and search for librarian, tell me which one of these GIFs looks like me. I don't think there's a single one. So yeah, there's loads of content there that you can add as well as a GIF. And when you add a GIF, just like when you add an image, you can then add something else. So it's a one-shot reply if you like. So that is basically how you tweet. So I just want to summarize everything so we've got a clear idea of how to use Twitter professionally. First is, it's really easy to get into. It genuinely doesn't take a lot of time to set up an account. It does take time to find the people you want to follow and to actually curate the people that you follow, which I think is really important. You can use Twitter in a lot of different ways, and basically you decide how you use it, whether you use it professionally or whether you use it, in a more sort of hybrid way, or whether it's purely a private account. That's a decision I cannot make for you, that you have to make for yourself. The other thing is, use it as a networking tool. Whether you use it professionally or not, it's a great way of connecting to people. It's also a great way of interacting with people. So I have a lot of followers on my personal account that I like having a chat about football with, or about photography or things like that. And we exchange messages quite frequently using Twitter on a whole variety of topics. The timeline, I would recommend you set to following rather than for you. That way you get a more curated timeline. If you want a hyper curated timeline, you can use the lists for that, should you wish to put the time in to do that work. So, do I recommend you use Twitter? Well, it's your own choice. I can't force you, but I have gained a lot from Twitter. Right, I hope you have found this video interesting. It's taken me a long time to get it all together, but I think it might be very useful for people. So if you do like it, like and subscribe. Let me know if there is anything else I can do for you, and see you for the next one. Tim, out. That's so cool. That's such a YouTube thing. Yeah.